All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the first part of acoustics, and that is the science of sound, including its production, transmission, and effects. So the issue there is that whole subject can be very complex because it's an actual study of the science of sound. So, to give a real quick overview of that is be very difficult. I've been trying to study sound for quite a while now, and even for me to just sit down and give some basics on it, that the whole concept can get very complex. But basically, how it's dealing with it in here, just in like in the Wikipedia, is the cause, the generation mechanism, the transduction, acoustic wave propagation, reception, transduction, and effect. So basically, you're looking at your, let's just take a very simple example, is that, your finger or your pick, is going to strike a string, and then that string is going to be the generating mechanism. The pick is going to be the cause, and then it's going to generate some sound, and then it's going to propagate through the air, and then something is going to perceive it, that your ear. So you understand that here a simple example is that your ear hears things, sound and frequencies at an equal level differently, and that's a reason why you want to investigate the equal loudness contour. So that is basically, that transduction is affecting that sound. Your ear, in the way that it's built, is actually an effect on the sound. So then the end answer is the effect of all those things that we've just spoken about for a final product. And that's a real simple example, but that can be very complex, because when you start looking, even if you get on Wikipedia and you look up sound and you go, okay, well, what is sound? That can't be that difficult, right? Well, it is, and for me to sit here and say, well, it's something real simple to explain, that, a lot of the basics, all sound starts out, as far as what you're hearing, it's all a sinusoid, and then combined sinusoids become complex waveforms that can have volume modulation, frequency modulation, different types of harmonic content, inharmonic content, non-harmonic content, harmonic distortion, noise, all kinds of things like that are going to create sound, and different things are going to be the cause of it. The pick, and then the guitar string, and then what else is propagating it? Is the circuitry in the guitar, the pickup, and the chord, everything in line, that it's going maybe affecting the sound, and is part of the acoustics of understanding what's happening to the sound, the actual science of sound. So those lines can get kind of blurry. Does that make sense when you're talking to somebody and all of a sudden they're going, well, that doesn't sound like acoustic, bro. I want to talk about my room. And it's like, well, but it is, the way some people see it. And if you really get into it, that it can be a little confusing. Those lines can get a little bit blurry. So, it's very hard to address that. Very simple things, it's dealing with, the pitch, the duration, loudness, timbre, all kinds of sonic textures would be, harmonics, non-harmonics, noise, harmonic distortion, all kinds of things that are in the sound. And what caused that? You're going right back to the guitar string, that nylon string or that steel string or that electric guitar string, they may all sound different as comparison to a violin string. The acoustical properties of it, and as it works, as a transductor to propagate sound, and that is basically part of acoustics, the way some people see it and the way a lot of people see it. But a lot of people, it doesn't sink in as that's part of acoustics. They get thinking about, the acoustics in their room or something like that, and reverb and stuff like that, it's the science of sound. So basically, when you're dealing with if you've watched a lot of the videos on this channel, that you've probably got a pretty good understanding of a lot of those things. Attack, decay, sustain, or release. Even a simple property like that, when you're dealing within a synthesizer, is a very huge part of, acoustics, in the science of sound. and how that becomes part, and how that shapes a timbre, or, harmonic content, unharmonic content, noise, and everything else that might be part of that sound. And, how it's, the trans, how it's moving from one place to another, and what might be affecting it while it's moving around. So that whole concept and that whole study can be very complex. But, I would suggest that the first thing that you do is you look at acoustics in Wikipedia, then you look at sound in Wikipedia and browse through it. I would imagine that if you spend a few days, in the evenings or something, and just look through it real well, that by the time you get done, try to keep things as simple as possible. And, and if you've watched the videos that I've made on this channel, and you've watched all of them, you've probably got a pretty good understanding of a whole lot of those concepts anyway. That stuff's going to probably make a lot more sense. And when it starts getting, way too micro analysis of the sound for what you need to do in the studio, that, you can back off a little bit. Because, a lot of times when I put out a video or something, I'll try to, sometimes yes and sometimes no, but sometimes I'll be trying to put things in a way to where you can look at it and say, what am I going to need out of this for what I'm doing? Rather than, I have to become an audio engineer or an acoustic engineer, because they're different things, they just are, when you're looking at sound, and it's like, in acoustics is an interdisciplinary science that deals with the study of mechanical waves and gases, fluids, and solids, including vibration, sound, ultrasound, or infrasound. A scientist who works in the field of acoustics is an acoustician, while someone working in the field of acoustical engineering may be called an acoustical engineer. Now, you try to understand what I just spoke about, and then apply it to those two, those two individuals that have those name tags on them, and then you're dealing with, you might be yourself, that might be somewhat, is going to have to be somewhat in an understanding of those fields. But an audio engineer, on the other hand, is concerned with recording, manipulating, mixing, and reproduction of sound. So, that understanding of the first part, I said that, and then looking at the point of you're trying to become something of an audio engineer in your recording and your mixing and your mastering of the music, that those are going to become interconnected to some point. I mean, there's just no way around it, even if you don't see yourself as an acoustician, or an audio engineer, that, you're trying to become to some degree of both of them, or you wouldn't be anywhere near the studio. So, that's, something you to take into consideration and understand what those two things are and how they kind of go together. And I hope I kind of made that clear, so that, that kind of opens up the door for you to see that those two differences, that, they really, the lines between them can be very blurred, especially if you're composing and you're synthesizing and you're creating sound and you're sound sculpting, and you're doing all the kind of stuff that can be happening in the studio today, that you're going to want to have a little bit of understanding, and sometimes a lot in both of those areas to get done what you want to do. So, basically, like I said, that, my first thing to tell you would be, is to get on there and start digging around. There's more than likely some books that you can find. Try to find books that are very simple first. What is sound? What is timbres? What is pitch, duration, loudness? What is noise? All those concepts that, if you've watched the videos on this channel, that we've already talked about a lot of them anyway. And instead of trying to find seriously scientific understandings of them, try to go through the internet and find real basic understandings of them. And as you grasp, basic understandings, try to branch out a little bit and try to grab hold of something intermediate understanding, and a little bit above intermediate understanding, and then, I'm getting closer to advanced, but I'm not a rocket scientist yet, and maybe you don't want to be, but, does that make sense? And that will make it a lot less painful. When I was studying sound and that kind of stuff, that, I'd be sitting around trying to figure the math out. I'm going, I can't even understand what he's talking about, because I got no understanding about this trigonomic function. And there was some times that, I really didn't need to understand that for what I was trying to do, but I wanted to be, I want to understand acoustics, and I want to understand audio engineering, in a very in-depth way. But a lot of stuff that I was doing in the studio, that some of it got to a point, and it was like that other stuff, I really don't. It's great to understand. It's going to make me better at what I do, but I'm not going to have it to do that for a lot of times. Which you'll find me saying that kind of stuff, and I'll say, no, dude, keep studying. But, you know, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are recording, mixing, and mastering that are not acousticians and are not audio engineers. And I know some people who say that there are acousticians and they are audio engineers, and I've talked to them, and I know they're not an audio engineer or acoustician. I mean, I just know they're not. Some of them are fairly knowledgeable, but I wouldn't put those name tags on them. So you got to be real careful of that when you're talking to people about that also, and understand the line of what you need for your level of production. So I hope that was real helpful, and I hope that kind of gave you some direction to study that, and just in this video to understand that we've addressed a lot of these issues anyway. And if you go back through all the videos in this channel, you're probably going to have a pretty good understanding of a whole lot of these concepts. But basically, the science of sound can be very complex, and this part of acoustics is a very complex subject, and so is the second part of acoustics when you're dealing with, you know, the acoustics of, you know, an area or a room or something like that, which we'll talk about in the next video a little bit. But I'm trying to just lay basics out there so that you have some direction to go in. And so basically, I hope that helped out some and kind of gave you some direction and give you a little bit of understanding of that and what that means, so that you can branch out a little bit and dig around some to better your understanding of it. And the way I approach this video is, if you watch the videos, you've probably seen a lot about it already, but the basic understanding of it, so that when we're talking about other parts of acoustics, that you're not talking about being an acoustician or something. Does that make sense? Because that is understanding the science of sound, and that can be very complex, just as becoming an actual audio engineer can be very complex. It's the basics you want to get a handle on, and the basics you want to understand. And those basics, the knowledge of them will grow as you work in your studio recording, mixing, and mastering it. And I hope you keep reading to try to figure out more and understand more, so you can be better at what you do, like I'm trying to be. Peace, hope, love. As far as that goes, that I've got lots of videos on this channel. And if you go through all these, there's a whole lot of videos on here to help you understand a lot of concepts as far as the science of sound is concerned, and concepts that are related to sound, to help you understand what's going on with sound. So I really certainly hope you use this to go through and really look at, you know, I mean, there are timbres of instruments, you know, noise and distortion, complex polar waveforms, simple explanations of phase, EQ. There's a lot of videos on here that can give you some real good basic understandings of a lot of the concepts that you'll be dealing with, you know, while you're learning. So I really suggest you go through there and look at those also. And I hope that helps a lot, and I hope those videos help you a lot. And peace, hope, love.